Hey everybody, Joe Morrison, 49SAF Pod, coming to you from the 8th floor of City Hall and a far too bright office, though I won't complain too much about that. Anyway, we've got Ben Kellie on the podcast of K2Dronotics. He and his brother Nick run a aerospace/drone company here in the state of Alaska, the only aerospace/drone company /startup that's family owned that I've really ever come across. So kind of neat. We'll hear from Ben. And many moons ago, Ben reached out, sent a cold email to the 49SAF, said, hey, I'm a guy who works for SpaceX and I have a startup. What is this thing called the 49th State Angel Fund? There's a couple people over the years who have done that. I hope to have more of them on the podcast because it's been really interesting to see how they evolve. And in Ben's case, he was abroad, not overseas, but he was in the lower 48. He came back to Alaska to build his company. Pretty cool story. Ben is probably the most positive person, he and John Bittner of the Alaska Small Business Development Center. Ben Kellie is probably the most positive person who sees the brightest future for Alaska startups we've had on this podcast. He sees no downsides, all upsides, loves Alaska entrepreneurs, thinks they're more resourceful than any other entrepreneurs he's ever met, and is really encouraging of people who come to our state or who are in our state to get out there, get connected, start going to events, and start connecting with people who can help them build what they want to build and create the value proposition that they want to create. Jump out, get out there, go do it. He's also a UAF grad, so go Nanooks if that's your flavor of University of Alaska school. Before we get started, really important note, Pitchfest 2018 happening at the Accelerate Alaska Conference. Look, here's the deal. 3 $500 prizes, one for the best new pitch, one for the best existing pitch, one for the People's Choice Award, hosted by Alaska Growth Capital and the 49SAF. That's August 30th. You can register for this competition through basically midnight, maybe 11:30 p.m. on August 27th. So get up there. You know, this is a great opportunity to test out some ideas, put together a 5-minute pitch, make it dynamite. And if you need some resources, we've posted a slide deck at 49saf.com. Accelerate Alaska happening August 29th and 30th. August 30th, Pitchfest, 4 p.m., Lusac Library, Assembly Chambers. We're going to hear 10 pitches, and we're going to have a great time. Hope you can make it. Better yet, hope you can pitch. Email me at morrisonjn@muni.org if you've got any questions. And let's get to the real meat of the thing. Let's get to Ben Kellie. Here we go. I bought you a cookie.
Thank you. Really?
Yeah, it's right there.
I'm allergic to chocolate chips, though. So
well, that means it's my cookie now, doesn't it?
Yeah. But, I hope you enjoy it.
Are you discombobulated today?
I'm discombobulated every day, so you have to measure from the correct datum. I mean, I think if you normalize...
What does datum mean?
It's a reference point.
Okay.
I'm pretty discombobulated as like a norm.
Okay.
That's kind of my thing.
All right. So why are you discombobulated today specifically?
Ooh. Well, we are getting some of our first fittings back out of the machine shop, which is great. And then you get to enjoy it for about 10 seconds, and you got to go test them and qualify them, clean them, and send them to your customer. So it's like... you're over that first hump of sinking all this engineering time into designing this really cool thing, and you get this reward of it showing up. And then it's like, oh, right, we have to like prove this thing works and build this entire test series and then run it out the door and send it to the client. Maybe they'll send a check.
Well, you've dived into it. So help me understand what it is you do and why pieces of machinery are coming back from a machine shop and why you have to test them.
My name's Ben Kellie. My brother and I run a company called K2Dronotics here in town. So for the last 3 years, we've been pushing drones off the grid to do scientific data gathering, engineering work, inspection work, mapping, just trying to jump over infrastructure gaps that you get off the road system and figure out how we can bring back better data for better decision making and better living in rural Alaska.
Yeah, but why are you getting parts back from a machine shop if your K2Dronotics thing goes and flies missions and helps people figure out how to manage drone systems?
Well, so prior to moving back to Alaska, I worked for SpaceX. I was a lead engineer for them, doing launch site build and design and operation. And I was also the lead field engineer putting together the landing barges and running those first missions. So long story short on that is I've continued to consult to them and 3 or 4 other aerospace startups, all trying to build rockets and bring them to market. And we just keep solving this same problem over and over, which is how do we build a launch site? What does it look like? And how do we make it capital efficient? And so to start to answer that question, we've started building these specialized rocket fittings, for lack of a better word. I mean, it sounds a little over the top, but they're the specialized hardware that we've designed and built that goes on the vehicle and helps them fill the rocket with fuel and gas and other propellants and get ready to go to do their mission. So
this sounds different from what K2 does.
Well, I mean, in a way it is. In a way it's not. I mean, what you're doing is, K2 is a bit of a transportation and logistics company, and Rocketry is transportation and logistics. I mean, we're moving things to different places, but it's the same kind of mindset to both. And really, I guess the hardware, developing hardware is different and certainly challenging, but it's something we've always wanted to do. With K2, we knew we could solve an immediate problem, and it was something we could get out and do right now when we were learning lessons about doing something scalable. And with this new effort, which we're calling the launch company right now, we're realizing that our scalable opportunity is building these widgets for these rocket companies.
So I think what I'm trying to, do you think you're pivoting?
No, I think we're diversifying, which is like such a cop out. And I'm sorry I said it already.
You can do whatever you want. It's your show.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
So
say what you like.
Oh, no, I thought you meant the company. I was like, yeah, we can do whatever we want.
You can do that too. It is your company.
That's the fun thing. I mean,
yours and Nick's company.
I mean, that's the thing about, we're a fully revenue run business, right? So we've taken on no investment. We've been around for about 3 years now, just running on contracts. So if somebody said, Ben, I want you to make potato chips, I would sit down and figure it out. But I think that what we're really doing is we're realizing that what made us unique in the rocket industry originally was bringing our kind of bush pile Alaska mentality to things that hadn't really been thought about in that way. And so we're continuing to do that and pivot over and scale. But we've got a lot of great work with K2 as well. So we're just chasing both.
Well, now we're going down some interesting rivers. Was your dad a bush pilot?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So my dad moved up here. God, I don't know. I don't think the Gregorian calendar had been adopted yet, but he moved up here a long time ago, and he was flying out of Fort Yukon. And then we had a little smaller cargo company out of Kenai as I was growing up.
And so you're doing a family-run business. Mm-hmm. I am trying to think if I've run into a family startup before. I don't know that I have. What's that like? You've been in startups before, so how is this different, good, better, worse?
Man, yeah, lots to think about there. I mean, running the family business as a kid was great because we got to spend all summer together, load the planes, we're flying everywhere, we're having a great time, and we just all got along and worked really well together. And I think that dynamic is extended to K2. Like Nick and I see eye to eye. We know how to challenge one another when we think we're going the wrong direction in a constructive way and get it going back the right way. And we have complementary skill sets. I'm kind of the loud, over the top, crazy one, and he's the more down to earth, diligent details guy. So it's a good pairing. We actually haven't run into any major challenges in our dynamic or in running the company. We've added a third leg here, which is Erin, who does our business development, and she has brought in just an amazing amount of perspective, different opinion, and really helped us streamline our thinking and go in a lot of really cool new directions.
So you've been back 3 years. Mm-hmm. You decided to come here. Where were you living before you moved back to Alaska?
So I left Alaska in 2010 and went and did a master's degree at Ohio State in Columbus. Got hired on with SpaceX and moved out to the bustling metropolis of Lompoc, California, so we could be out on the Air Force Base building a launch site. Left there and moved to Seattle to work on a little hardware startup, which I think you might remember, called Stamp Thermoelectric, and then got poached back by SpaceX to build the barge as kind of a contracting consultant. So I went Ohio, California, Seattle, and then I was splitting time between Louisiana and Florida before moving back to Alaska. So just been all over the place.
So why Alaska?
Well, I mean, why not Alaska? I think that's why I hesitate. I love it here. I love the people. I love the community. I love how we're kind of still trying to figure out what in the heck we want this state to be and how we want it to look. And I think we're really fortunate to have this really rich indigenous tradition here that we can kind of embrace and understand as we build a sustainable state going forward. I don't think Alaska should look like the other states. I don't think it should feel and function like the other states. And I think our economy reflects that, but maybe in not the strongest way right now. But I think over time, we can build that up and make it into something that's really strong that benefits everybody top to bottom.
What do you think it should feel and look like then?
I think Alaska needs to realize that we have an insane amount of natural resource, both renewable and non. And when we do, but I don't think we necessarily trust ourselves to develop that, to take the reins. There'll be times that I'll be in client meetings and they're like, well, I know you could build this for us and we could test and blah, blah, blah. But, there's this team in the lower 48 that we've been talking to. And it's like, we're just as good as that team. I think more in-house solutions make a lot more sense. And I have a hard time believing that the same people that like fill the freezer for winter and chop firewood and drive around with warm clothes and tools in the back of their car can't also take this economy and just run with it. And I think that we're starting to see that turnaround. Like we're seeing a ton of cool stuff coming out of the co-working space at the boardroom. We're seeing a ton of cool stuff come out of Launch Alaska. And I know 489 SAF is doing a lot of cool stuff. Like I think the momentum's building, but it's about getting that word out and getting more people kind of infected with that excitement so we can just keep charging forward and make this whatever we want it to be. I think it's a huge opportunity.
So you talked about an inferiority complex to some extent. You said, I'm in a meeting, I'm with a resource extraction company. We're talking about the needs that they have. And I point out, hey, I can fulfill those needs. Mm-hmm. We can build that. I build stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. Right? And you do build stuff all the time. And they sort of promote or think of external options. Do you think that Alaskans have an inferiority complex? Question number one.
Ooh. No, not overall. I think maybe, I'm casting my own personal insecurities, having gone to the lower 48 and went to grad school and working for a big tech startup. I certainly did, certainly thought I wasn't good enough to be there and compete, but did. And the thing that made me stand out, all of us engineers, right, getting trotted into SpaceX, we all know the math, we all know the science, we've done the work in college. But what I had that they didn't was growing up in a place where I had to fend for myself and I had to make do with the pieces that I had. And I didn't know what it was like to just be able to bolt together whatever custom stuff I wanted. I was more used to MIGing something together and taping it and forcing it to work. And that just happened to be the thing that the startup aerospace community has a huge appetite for. And it's kind of this frontier thinking where it's like, we know how to do it for less. And really there's a huge parallel between that and what we're seeing in the lean startup world. It's like, oh, test sooner and build it quick and scrappy and get out the door. It's like, yeah, we live that way here, right? That's growing up in Western Alaska and flying groceries and moving supplies around. But it's huge for our aerospace partners. So I don't think necessarily we do. I think maybe more of an inferiority complex. It's more of we have a bit of a chip on our shoulder and maybe a little bit of something to prove. And yeah.
What about external perceptions of Alaska? You've been out. What's your take? So this is interesting. Sometimes I've talked to people up here and they don't reveal themselves to be an Alaska agency necessarily. If they're competing for a marketing contract, they might just say, hey, we're, the ideas company or something.
Sure.
So do you actually think that there is any external bias, any external lens on an Alaska company, or do you think it's just, hey, it's a wide open marketplace, go compete?
I can only speak from my personal experience. I think it works to our advantage a lot of times. First of all, a lot of the engineers that I work with in the lower 48 are like, when you're hiring, will you please call me? Because I want to come live in Alaska. Great. That's awesome. We can always use smart people that want to work hard. But I think if you leave it neutral, then certainly we can go compete. But I think we actually have the ability to spin the same way we've spun it to your advantage. Where instead of saying oh, I don't know if we can compete on the wide open thing, you own it. You're like, yeah, we fly in sub-zero temperatures. We go out into the middle of, these low infrastructure areas, very rural areas, and we execute these very complex missions. We design and build this aerospace hardware that works down on Kodiak. We helped get a launch off of Kodiak about 4 weeks ago. And I think you can actually spin it and take that brand and that national perception of Alaska as this wondrous, big, wild, open place, and you can inject it into your brand and make what you want out of it. So I think it's a big advantage.
Let's talk about the launch in Kodiak. So yeah. A, what's in Kodiak, and B, what did you launch there? And C, why haven't I heard about it before?
Man, okay. I might need that enumeration scheme again. So what is in Kodiak is the Pacific Spaceport Complex, which is owned by Alaska Aerospace. They've done a lot of traditional kind of Army work, military work, getting rockets put up and doing some stuff for like MDA and stuff. And I think what a lot of people remember is the incident in 2011 where they lost a vehicle and damaged the pad a little bit. But Kodiak is a really, really great place to launch this new generation of small to medium rockets, because almost all of these customers want to go to polar or sunsync or other like highly elliptical orbits. And there's these lines out of Kodiak that you can take. You can get on the exact same trajectories as you would that we used to do out of Annenberg, California, but you can also go highly elliptical and you're never going to really cross land. So you've got this huge swath that you can swing through to get almost any north-south kind of highly elliptical orbit that you want. And it's a commercial spaceport. So you're not working on like a U.S. Air Force installation. You can go in and you can work with Alaska Aerospace one-on-one.
So B is, what did you launch?
So right now what's going on is you're seeing this huge amount of investment in small to medium rockets around the country. And there's only so many different on-ramps to space, right? If you want to get on the freeway to outer space, there's only so many different on-ramps. That's like what these launch sites are. And they're set up, they're with the FAA, they're licensed. You go and get your launch license, and there's this whole stack of paperwork you have to do.
What other traction have you seen in the aerospace industry here in Alaska? There's there's a facility, but you need more than that to start to generate the vertical. Mm-hmm. What is anybody else coming up? Is anything else happening? How else can we help?
Cool. Yeah. So there is a ton of other stuff going on, but it's a little quiet at the moment because, these companies kind of try to move slow. They play everything close to the vest. Everybody's very secretive, but I know that there's 4 to 5 new clients all talking about trying to use Kodiak for their launch operations. We're hoping to get in and help them navigate the logistics, help them navigate design if we can, help them in any way we can. And what's really interesting is that there's a ton of parallels between the process technology to run a launch site and the process technology to run essentially like resource extraction. So there's some teams in town that build really great, like wellhead monitoring skids and different process technology skids, and they're identical, if not better than what we've seen traditionally for aerospace. So we actually have a very parallel and complementary skill set that if we can figure out how to translate over and take advantage of, gives us a pretty unique and compelling value prop. Our ultimate goal with TLC is to build a multi-user launch site on Kodiak where we have this permanently deployed infrastructure and anybody can come up and use it and launch their rocket so that they can get to launch faster and more reliably.
So you've been back for 3 years. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what you've seen in, whether it's Alaska, whether it's the startup ecosystem, the good, the bad, the promising, the ugly. Give me a positive and negative.
Okay. I think the positive is just the sheer amount of momentum that's building. I see just a ton of new faces at every event, which is really exciting. I see a lot of excitement, and I think that, we're doing it our way. We're figuring it out, and it's our ecosystem to define. And I'm seeing a lot of really cool, younger and older people both getting involved and just taking ownership and starting to drive it forward, not waiting for permission to see what it might become and just sprinting forward, which is great. I don't really have a strong negative. I mean, I'm here very much by choice, and I believe in this state and the ecosystem and the people. I think one thing that we need is just more exposure. Like the people down south can see all the cool stuff that's going on and understand like the unique value and opportunity that we have here. And what was the third one?
I don't think I had a third one.
There's like a promising or something.
Well, okay. What's promising? Sure, you can do that.
I mean, it's all promising, really. I mean, I've always visited even while I was gone, and I would take coffee with people and I'd see what was going on, and just how much has changed in the last 5 years in the entrepreneurship ecosystem here is insane. I mean, it was like my choice before was sitting at home, like in an apartment, eating Fruit Loops and trying to like get somebody to pay attention to me. And now there's events every night. There's the co-working space. We have our office down at the boardroom. Everybody gets together there, and there's things going on at the university and at BEI, CED, and all these really cool things happening that I just feel this huge momentum starting to build. It's night and day between what I saw you just 5 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've come a really long way. And I think that if you think of how fast it's evolved, it's light speed. Right. If you think of it that way, like it hasn't been really a slow ramp up. I think that in many ways, Alaska's ecosystem is ahead of other mid-sized cities' ecosystems. That's just a personal observation. Go ahead.
Well, follow-up question for you. So what gives you those indications, or what do you think is at the root of that? Is it that there's other interesting work, other places that wouldn't necessarily draw people out into the ecosystem, and here we're having to kind of find our own way, or we're just more entrepreneurially minded and independent here, and so we find our way to it naturally? I mean, what's your thought?
I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of bias here. I think the funding sources mattered. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of the university's work has helped. I think the co-working space has helped. I think that Juneau has helped. They were kind of on their own trajectory before we had the conversation in Anchorage. Mm-hmm. I think Fairbanks sort of coming down and getting engaged at times has helped. Talk about, do you have a chip on your shoulder?
Not actually. I did. I grew up with a chip on my shoulder for sure. Man, I remember going and looking at grad schools in lower 48 and like sitting in on lectures to see like, what am I missing? Like, what am I not missing not being at Purdue and Stanford and UW, which are like all schools I was really looking at for undergrad and grad school. And just, I don't know, I think,
What was the answer? What were you missing?
Nothing. I mean, science is science and physics is physics. Like, I have the same book they have, and we have and UAA is great too. I'm not trying to say just UAF, but UAF is my experience was like, we had great professors there. We learned a ton. And the other thing that they did that I realized when I got to grad school was they would just turn us loose on stuff. My senior design project was like designing and building a wind turbine out of spare parts that you would find in like a remote village. So like old snow machine parts and things like that. We wrote this little book. And I remember talking to somebody at grad school about it, and they're like, what? Like, why did you get to do that? And their senior design was very regimented, and it was only CAD, and they didn't actually get to build anything. And our professor was like, yeah, dude, just go build, like machine, crank things together. And I think that was the start of realizing, what the differentiator can be and what sets us apart is just how practical we can be and how powerful that is when you made it to something like, the engineering education. And so, no, wasn't missing anything. I think the chip on my shoulder was just, you're a young person, you want to go out, you want to prove that you can do things, blah, blah, blah. But now I'm thrilled to be home. I'm thrilled to be like working with people in this ecosystem across all levels. And like my personal passion other than, like getting these companies to work and paying the bills and maybe having, like food in the fridge occasionally is working with other people to infect them with the same insanity to come out and do these things with us and encouraging people and show them that they can do it. There's no magic sauce. You just got to do it and jump out and be a part of it. So I think instead of a chip, I've just got a ton of enthusiasm now.
So talk about two other groups, organizations, companies where you see that enthusiasm that you're excited about working with, whether they're startups. I mean, preferably if they're startups. So 60 Hertz is doing essentially figuring out ways to streamline maintenance and operations excellence across remote village co-op and electrical infrastructure so that these things have better uptime and they can find efficiencies and that they can find different ways to make everything run better. And they also have a cool funding product as well, which I don't know nearly enough about to try and speak about. But go look at 60 Hertz and learn about it. Attenly is essentially using machine learning, artificial intelligence algorithms to monitor crowds. So like they watched the crowd while I was talking to them at demo day and let me know, maybe the crowd wasn't so engaged with what you had to say. And so they did a live demo. It was really cool. And they're measuring facial response on people via video, which is awesome for like marketing research and political campaigns and people who are public speakers, figuring out like, what is the response to what you're doing? And I think they're really pioneering a lot of cool stuff in that area. So you've got this frontier thinking thesis. So yeah. I'm going to ask you, and whether you want to bring it back to yourself, to Attenly, to 60 Hertz, tell me what the frontier thinking Alaska startup thesis is.
It's getting there faster. And that's a big piece of what I did for SpaceX. I mean, I'm a pretty middle of the road engineer, but what I was able to do for them was say, here's how we can do this faster, cheaper, and right now. And that's what startups care about, right? And so that's what our clients care about is like, dude, we're out of time. Like, how can we do this right now? And we're really good at situational and real-time problem solving because we live in a place that demands that of us.
So what is the opposite of that? What's the stuck thinking that you wanted to talk about?
I think I don't know, it's challenging to articulate. I think where I see stuck thinking is people thinking that maybe it won't get better or it can't be different or this is how things have been and how they've looked. When I've been talking to people over the last month, like showing them this, video of this rocket launching out of Kodiak, and they're like, what? Like rocket launch? That's Florida. It's like, no, that's here.
We're going to wrap up here.
Okay.
One wish for the ecosystem.
I think my wish would just be that more people continue to get involved, even if it's like moonlighting, side hustle, whatever you have to do to like push a change. And not just talking about business. Business is the vehicle by which cool things happen, but any community project that makes this like a place that's more connected, more equal, and gets more people access to things in this community that, we live in a challenging place. If we can find a way to improve that, getting people out the door to take those things on, it's only going to make this a better place. And I'd like to see more and more of that engagement. Not that it's not already awesome, but more is always better.
So do your thing, right?
Yeah, whatever sets somebody on fire, like not literally, but whatever pumps you up and gets you out of bed and you wish you were doing, just do it. Like, let's go. I was just talking to another entrepreneur at the boardroom about this before I came over here. This state is so flat organizationally that it doesn't take a lot to like get a hold of the people you need to get a hold of to do whatever you want. And we have this launch site sitting down in Kodiak, and I'm working with the UAA rocket team to help them build a test stand to go test their engine. It's just like, yeah, well, let's just go do that. Alaska's a place where you can make that happen. It's awesome.
That sounds really good. So let's close things out. You are going to be talking about the launch company, which is K2, but it's the rocketry stuff you're doing at K2. When and where and when can people see you next?
We are speaking at the Anchorage Museum in the Muse restaurant on Wednesday, September 5th at 9 a.m. as part of the 1 Million Cups Anchorage. And we'll be showing the fittings we built thus far, talking about the launch site we built or, helped build down in Kodiak that we helped design, and what the future opportunity we see there. As far as that, if anybody wants to talk or have coffee, shoot me an email, because I just want to get as many people infected with what we can do up here as possible. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're really leading the way as an entrepreneur who's giving back to the community,
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Obviously, I think that we could do a better job of engaging been there, done that entrepreneurs. But, for the next generation of entrepreneurs, they're busy building companies, getting creamed, trying to be cash flow positive,
Yeah, dude.
And so it's hard. So it's good that you're doing that. Where can people reach you via email, Twitter, whatever?
My Twitter handle is @NorthRoadBen, and my email is ben@K2Dronotics.com. Shoot me a note. I'd love to chat and figure out what you're working on.
And September 5th at the Anchorage Museum, 9 a.m., right?
9 a.m. for 1 Million Cups.
Right. And so next week, before September 5th, 49SAF is doing a thing. It's part of the Accelerate Alaska conference. And what we're going to be doing is we're having a pitch fest, 5 new ideas, 5 existing ideas, $1,500 in prizes, provided by Alaska Growth Capital and the 49SAF. That's August 30th, 4 p.m., Lusac Library. And it's going to be a really fun experience. Saw some of the pitches today. I saw some interesting stuff.
Oh, so it's too late for me to try to get in on that $1,500.
No, it's not too late. The deadline for application, I think, is August 27th at midnight. So,
all right, people, you got 4 days.
Anybody, 5 minutes, $500. 5 minutes can get you $500. It's worth your time to pitch. If you've been thinking about something, this is a good forcing function to get you up, talking about it, and working on your idea.
Yeah, and we'll be at Accelerate Alaska too, so we'll see you all there. We're speaking.
Well, that's it. That's Ben Kellie of K2Dronotics, Joe Morrison of the 49SAF. And as he heads home and he thinks about a cookie, avoiding chocolate chips as he tries to eat one, Ben Kellie is going to think back to his days of yore, listen to Sebastian Bach singing I Remember You. He's a big Skid Row fan. Don't hold it against him, folks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joe. Got a huge mouthful of cookie here.
How are you going to not die from eating chocolate?
Well, I'm not actually allergic to chocolate chips. I've been on a crazy diet all summer. I've dropped 35 pounds. So I'm trying not to eat this stuff, but I'm going to love them. So I pretend I'm allergic.